Imagine waking up and the air itself is trying to kill you. Not in some poetic, metaphorical way. The actual atmosphere around your face is eating through your lungs like acid through paper. Your water is poison. Your neighbors want to skin you alive and hang your corpse from a lamppost as a warning to others. And this is considered a good day. Welcome to the galaxy of Warhammer 40,000, a universe so hostile, so deliberately cruel, so thoroughly committed to making every single living being as miserable as physically possible, that the very concept of a safe place to live has basically been wiped from the dictionary. The Imperium of Man stretches across 1,000,000 worlds. On paper, that sounds like there should be at least a few nice ones. A beach planet here, a garden world there, maybe a quiet little moon where people grow crops and mind their own business. And sure, those exist somewhere out in the black. But for the vast majority of humanity in the 41st millennium, life is a grinding, screaming, bleeding nightmare from the cradle to the grave. And that grave comes early. The average imperial citizen lives in conditions that would make the worst slums on ancient Terra look like luxury estates. They eat recycled protein paste made from emperor knows what. They breathe air that has been filtered through 10,000 years of industrial pollution. They worship a god who sits on a golden throne made from the bones of a dream that died 10 millennia ago. And they do all of this while surrounded on every side by aliens that want to eat them, demons that want to corrupt them, and a government that considers them slightly less valuable than the ammunition they produce. But across that million-world empire, certain places stand out as being so unspeakably awful that even in a galaxy full of suffering, they make hardened veterans shudder. Places where the ground itself rebels against you, where your own government sees you as nothing more than raw material to be processed and spent, where the economy runs on agony and the currency is human screams. These are the real estate listings from the darkest corners of the galaxy, the places where you would not send your worst enemy. Actually, that is not true. In Warhammer 40k, these are exactly the places you send your worst enemies, and your friends, and your loyal citizens, and basically anyone who happens to be standing too close when the tithe collectors come around. So sit down, strap yourself in, and prepare yourself, because today we are going to walk you through the 10 worst places to live in Warhammer 40,000. We are starting at number 1 and counting all the way down to the absolute rock bottom of galactic real estate. Fair warning, some of these places will make you grateful for your own miserable commute to work. Others will make you question why anyone in this universe bothers getting out of bed in the morning. The answer, by the way, is usually because something with too many teeth is already in the bed. Number 1. Commorragh, the Dark City. Let us begin with what is quite possibly the single most twisted address in the entire galaxy. It is not on any planet. It is not in any star system you could point to on a map. It does not exist in what we would call normal space at all. Commorragh exists in the Webway, an ancient network of tunnels and pathways that runs through a dimension between real space and the warp. The Webway was originally constructed by the Old Ones, those ancient and mysterious beings who shaped the galaxy long before humanity crawled out of the mud on Terra. Later, it was adopted and expanded by the Aeldari, the elder race of graceful, psychically gifted aliens who built a civilization so advanced and so powerful that they ruled the galaxy for millions of years. Think of the Webway as a highway system between the stars. Portals connect one point in the galaxy to another, allowing instantaneous travel across distances that would take conventional ships years or decades to cross. It was the backbone of the Aeldari Empire. It was their greatest achievement, and then somebody took the rest stop and turned it into the largest city of torture and depravity ever conceived by any species in the history of the galaxy. Commorragh is the capital of the Drukhari, also called the Dark Eldar. To understand who the Drukhari are and why they live the way they do, you need to understand the fall. The Aeldari Empire, at the height of its power, had basically solved every problem a civilization could face. They had conquered disease, mastered technology that made imperial tech look like cave paintings, and eliminated virtually every external threat. But without challenges, without struggle, without anything meaningful to strive for, the Eldari turned inward. They began pursuing pleasure for its own sake, and being a species of incredibly powerful psychics, their collective emotional energy began pooling in the warp, the dimension of raw psychic energy that underlies all of reality. Over millions of years, this pooling psychic energy began to coalesce into something aware, something hungry. The Eldari's excess, their cruelty, their bottomless appetite for sensation, was giving birth to a new chaos god. And when Slaanesh, the Prince of Pleasure, the Lord of Excess, finally burst into existence, its birth scream echoed through both the material universe and the warp simultaneously. Billions of Eldari died instantly, their souls ripped from their bodies and consumed by the newborn god. The heart of the Eldari Empire was physically torn apart, replaced by a permanent wound in reality, called the Eye of Terror, a warp rift so massive it swallowed entire star systems and can be seen from across the galaxy. The Eldari who survived did so in different ways. Some had already left their decadent empire, fleeing on massive craft worlds to find a more disciplined way of life. Others, the Exodites, had abandoned technology entirely and settled on distant worlds as agrarian communities. But a third group, the ones who would become the Drukhari, simply refused to change. They retreated into the Webway and kept right on indulging. They found that the Webway's unique nature, being neither fully in real space nor in the warp, provided some protection from Slaanesh's hunger. Inside the Webway, the slow drain on their souls was diminished, not stopped, just diminished. And so, they built their city, and they found a way to fight the soul drain. A terrible, monstrous way. The Drukhari discovered that they could replenish their fading souls by absorbing the suffering of others. Pain, terror, anguish, despair. These emotions, when experienced by a living creature in proximity to a Drukhari, would feed the Dark Eldar, pushing back Slaanesh's grasp and restoring their vitality. The more intense the suffering, the more effective the feeding. And so, an entire civilization was built around the industrialized production of agony. Commorragh is not a city in any conventional sense. Its dimensions would be considered impossible if they could be measured by normal means. Its population is greater than that of entire star systems. It is a vast collection of satellite subrealms and pocket dimensions, linked by portals and dimensional shortcuts. You could walk through a doorway in one towering spire and step out in a section of the city that is physically thousands of light years away from where you started. The city has been growing for over 10,000 years, absorbing smaller port cities, private estates, and independent subrealms through conquest, manipulation, or simple annexation. Entire regions that were once sovereign territories have been folded into the Dark City, their inhabitants either subjugated or destroyed. Overhead, instead of a sun, there hang the Ilmea, stolen suns. Before the fall, the Eldari literally stole stars from the material universe and dragged them into Webway subrealms above Commorragh. These dying suns, these black suns, bathe the city in a perpetual crimson half-light that makes everything look like it has been dipped in blood. The civilizations that once depended on those stolen stars for warmth and light withered and froze to death in the void. The Eldari did not care then. The Drukhari do not care now. The stolen suns power the Dark City and keep its impossible architecture functioning. That is all that matters. Now, why is Commorragh the worst place to live? It is not just because of the architecture or the lighting. It is because suffering is the literal foundation of everything in the city. Billions of slaves are kept in Commorragh, captured in lightning raids from worlds across the galaxy. The Drukhari emerge from Webway portals that can appear anywhere, strike with devastating speed, capture as many living beings as possible, and vanish before any meaningful military response can be organized. Humans are the most common victims, but the Drukhari are not picky. Eldari, Tau, Orcs, anything with a nervous system capable of experiencing pain will do. Even other Drukhari are not safe, because in Commorragh, everyone is a potential resource. These slaves are distributed among three major power structures. The Cabals are the military and political organizations of the Dark City. Each Cabal is led by an Archon, a Drukhari of enormous personal power, cunning, and ruthlessness, who has fought, schemed, poisoned, betrayed, and murdered their way to the top of their organization. The Cabals control territory within the city, maintain private armies of Cabalite warriors, and organize the slave raids into real space that provide the city's essential supply of suffering. Competition between Cabals is savage and constant. Archons are always watching for signs of weakness in their rivals, always plotting the next assassination, the next betrayal, the next hostile takeover. The politics of Commorragh make the most cutthroat human corporate boardroom look like a kindergarten sharing circle. The most powerful Cabal in Commorragh is the Cabal of the Black Heart, led by Asdrubal Vecht. Vecht is arguably the most cunning and dangerous individual in the entire Warhammer 40,000 setting. He was born as a half-born slave in the lowest depths of the Dark City. He should have died in obscurity, as millions of slaves do. Instead, over the course of millennia, he schemed, manipulated, and murdered his way to absolute power. He founded the Cabal of the Black Heart from nothing and built it into the dominant force in Commorragh. He invented the very concept of the Cabal as a power structure, replacing the old noble houses that had ruled since before the fall. At one point, Vecht deliberately engineered an imperial invasion of Commorragh. He increased raiding against imperial shipping tenfold, specifically to provoke a military response. When the Imperium finally tracked the raiding parties back to their source and launched an attack, Space Marines from the Salamanders, Howling Griffins, and Silver Skulls chapters breached the Dark City itself. Drop pods slammed into the spires. Power-armored warriors fought through the streets. Entire sections of High Commorragh burned. And Vecht allowed it to happen. He wanted it to happen because the invasion destroyed the noble houses that stood in his way. The ancient aristocracy of Commorragh was smashed, and from the ashes, Vecht rose as the undisputed supreme overlord of the Dark City. Hundreds of his own people died. Thousands of slaves perished in the crossfire. He did not care. It was all according to plan. The second power structure is the witch cults. These are the gladiatorial organizations of Commorragh, and they are spectacles of violence that make ancient Roman arenas look like children's playgrounds. Captives are forced to fight in enormous arenas before screaming crowds of Drukhari spectators. The fighters face each other, exotic alien beasts, mechanical death traps, and sometimes all three at once. The deaths are drawn out as long as possible to maximize the suffering that the audience can feed on. The most skilled witches are celebrities in the Dark City, their names known throughout Commorragh. They fight with a grace and lethality that is almost beautiful to watch, if you can ignore the fact that they are murdering people for sport and supernatural sustenance. Succubi lead the witch cults, and these warrior women are among the deadliest close combat fighters in the galaxy. They move with a speed and precision that makes Space Marines look clumsy. Every motion is calculated to cause maximum pain and draw out the death of their opponent for as long as the crowd demands. A succubus does not just kill, she performs. Death is art in Commorragh, and the witch cults are its foremost practitioners. The third and perhaps most terrifying power structure is the Homunculi Covens. The Homunculi are flesh sculptors, mad scientists, and master torturers rolled into one. They are ancient beyond counting, some of the oldest living beings in the galaxy outside of the Chaos Gods themselves. They can reshape living flesh like clay, grafting on new limbs, removing organs one at a time, while keeping the victim fully conscious, reversing aging, curing any disease, and bringing the dead back to life. This last ability is what gives them their enormous political power. Archons and succubi who are killed in the constant power struggles of Commorragh can be resurrected by the Homunculi, though always at a price. This makes the Covens indispensable and virtually untouchable. The Homunculi's laboratories, called oubliettes, are places of horror beyond description. Victims are kept alive for centuries while being subjected to procedures that defy comprehension. Bodies are reshaped, mutilated, fused with other creatures, taken apart, and reassembled in configurations that serve no purpose except to produce maximum suffering. The homunculi view this work as art. They take pride in it. They compete with each other to produce the most exquisite forms of agony. Some have spent millennia perfecting a single technique of torture, achieving a level of expertise in causing pain that is literally superhuman. Living in Commorragh as a slave means an existence of unending agony with no possibility of escape. The city is hidden in the Webway. There is no map. There is no way out. Even if a slave could somehow break free of their chains, they would be lost in a dimension-spanning labyrinth of impossible architecture, surrounded by millions of predatory Drukhari. The rare few who have escaped did so only through extraordinary luck and the intervention of equally extraordinary rescuers. For the billions who are not so lucky, there is only pain, and the knowledge that your pain is keeping your captors alive. Living there as a Drukhari is only marginally better. You exist in a constant state of paranoia, surrounded by creatures who would betray you in a heartbeat for the slightest advantage. Trust does not exist. Friendship is a weapon. Love is a trap. Every smile hides a knife. Every compliment conceals a plot. The 13 Foundations of Vengeance, a code of dishonor laid down by Vecht himself, governs interactions between Drukhari, and every single one of those foundations is built on treachery. You cannot relax. You cannot let your guard down. The moment you show weakness, someone will exploit it. The moment you show strength, someone will test it. And the only law is power. If you have it, you survive. If you lose it, you become someone else's dinner. As one escaped slave described the Dark City, there is no day or night, just an eternal twilight, an ever-present ruddy glow that bathes all living things in bloodlight. The air is filled with screams and cruel laughter. When they put out his eyes, his ears alone still conveyed the omnipresent aura of dread and loathing. That was someone who survived Commorragh. Most do not. Number 2. Krieg. If Commorragh is the worst place to live because of deliberate alien cruelty, Krieg is the worst place to live because humanity did this to itself. Every single thing that is terrible about Krieg is a consequence of human decisions. Human corruption, human fanaticism, human stubbornness taken to its absolute, logical, horrifying extreme. Krieg is a monument to what happens when guilt becomes a civilization's entire identity. Krieg was once a thriving hive world, located in the Segmentum Tempestus. Billions of people lived there. It was a trading and manufacturing center with a functioning economy and a working society. The planet was ruled by a council of autocrats, an oligarchy of wealthy and powerful families who governed the hive cities. Not a paradise by any stretch, but livable. People were born, grew up, worked, had families, and died of old age. That is more than most worlds in the Imperium can say, then. The autocrats made a decision that would condemn their world for the next 10,000 years. Over centuries, the Council of Autocrats grew corrupt, paranoid, and decadent. They hoarded resources. They built private armies. They sank vast wealth into fortifying their hive cities against outside threats that existed mostly in their own imaginations. They resented the imperial tithes demanded by the Departamento Minatorum, viewing the resources shipped off-world as theft from their personal coffers. Their paranoia became self-fulfilling. The more they prepared for betrayal, the more they convinced themselves it was coming. The more they convinced themselves it was coming, the more they prepared. And eventually, preparation became action. In 433 of the 40th millennium, the High Autocrat of Krieg's largest hive, the chairman of the council, the de facto planetary governor, a man so despised that his name was literally erased from all imperial records by an edict of obliteration, declared planetary-wide martial law. He announced that Krieg was now independent of the Imperium of Man. He renounced the Emperor of Mankind as his divine master and political overlord. Civil war erupted immediately and violently. Much of the planet quickly fell to the rebels. The autocrats controlled the hive cities, the factories, the armories. They had private armies and the loyalty, bought or coerced, of much of the population, but not all of it. In High Ferrograd, Colonel Jurton of the 83rd Imperial Guard Regiment held firm. He was a loyalist. He had sworn an oath to the Emperor, and he would not break it. Jurton was under strict orders not to let Krieg fall to the traitors. But he also knew that no relief fleet was coming. The Imperium was vast, its resources stretched thin across a galaxy of perpetual war. A single rebellious hive world in the Segmentum Tempestus was not a priority. No fleet on the scale needed to retake Krieg was available. Jurten was on his own, and so he made the decision that would define his legacy and his world forever. He decided that Krieg would either belong to the Emperor or to no one. On the day of the Feast of the Emperor's Ascension, Colonel Jurten launched what became known as the Purging. Atomic weapons. Not a few, not a targeted strike, a full-scale nuclear bombardment of his own planet. For days, Krieg was engulfed in a sea of nuclear fire. The bombs fell on hive cities, on industrial centers, on military installations, on civilian population zones. It did not matter. Everything burned. The ecosystem collapsed in its entirety. A nuclear winter descended on the planet that would never lift. The oceans evaporated. The atmosphere became toxic with radioactive fallout. Every living thing on the surface that was not protected by hardened bunkers died. But the war did not end. Incredibly, impossibly, the fighting continued. Survivors on both loyalist and secessionist sides retreated underground into bunkers, subsurface shelters, and deep mining complexes. And they kept fighting for 500 years. Half a millennium of grinding, brutal, attritional trench warfare across a radioactive wasteland that no longer supported life of any kind. The surface of Krieg became a no-man's land of trenches, craters, rusting razor wire, and unburied bones. Drifting fallout ash shrouded the numberless dead. The survivors fought in gas masks and radiation suits, emerging from their bunkers to contest every inch of poisoned ground, dying by the thousands in each assault, only to be replaced by their children, who had been born in the bunkers and knew nothing but war. Children on Krieg were raised to fight from birth. They never saw sunlight. They never breathed clean air. They never ate fresh food. They were given gas masks before they were given names. Actually, that is literally true. On Krieg, soldiers are not given names. They are given numbers. A name is something earned through extraordinary service, and even then, the names chosen are typically the names of the original loyalists who fought alongside Colonel Jurten. The people of Krieg choose to be remembered as echoes of the dead. Finally, in 949 of the 40th millennium, the loyalists won. The last secessionist holdouts were destroyed. Krieg was brought back into the imperial fold. Colonel Jurten had long since died, though exactly how is not recorded. His descendants, and the descendants of every loyalist who had fought beside him, inherited a world that was utterly, comprehensively, irrevocably ruined. The Departamento Munitorum took direct control of Krieg after its return to imperial rule. The maximum tithe levels were enforced. Nothing was to interfere with the planet's new purpose, and that purpose was simple. Krieg would produce soldiers. The planet's sole function from that point forward was to turn out Death Corps regiments for the Astra Militarum, just as another world might mine ore or sow wheat. Except Krieg's crop was human beings bred to die. To meet the impossible demand for soldiers from a world that could barely sustain human life, Krieg was granted special dispensation to use the Vitae womb. This is a birthing technology that is viewed with horror and disgust by many in the Adeptus Mechanicus. The exact nature of the Vitae womb is deliberately left vague in imperial records, though it is acknowledged to involve accelerated reproduction techniques that allow Krieg to produce over 50 million soldiers per year. Whether this constitutes human cloning in the strictest sense remains a matter of debate. Some sources describe it as specialized artificial wombs. Others describe it as something far more disturbing, technology so questionable that even the initial architect of Krieg's rebellion, Colonel Jurten himself, is said to have hesitated before authorizing their use. Regardless of what the Vitae womb actually is, it works. And the Imperium does not ask too many questions about methods that produce results. Life on Krieg in the 41st millennium is as grim as anything in the entire Imperium. The surface remains an uninhabitable ruin, racked by radiation storms and lethal levels of toxicity. The entire population lives underground in subterranean cities that support forges to churn out war material for the Imperial Guard. These underground warrens are lit by artificial light that never changes. The air is recycled endlessly through ancient filtration systems. People eat nutrient slime and vat-grown gruel, carefully rationed because even these meager rations are in short supply. Exhaustion, malnutrition, and industrial accidents keep the civilian life expectancy only marginally higher than that of a frontline Death Corps soldier. And those soldiers have a life expectancy measured in weeks once deployed. Recruitment starts almost from birth. The ability to withstand the hardships of living on an atomic-blasted world is enhanced further by brutal training designed to rapidly weed out the weak and the unworthy. Mental conditioning is the key component of a Krieg recruit's training. Their minds are purposefully broken and remade. Absolute faith in the Emperor is installed at an early age, amplifying pre-existing cultural norms regarding honor and self-sacrifice to create what the ecclesiarchy calls a cult of sacrifice. Individual identity is systematically erased. Medals and commendations are unheard of because bravery and heroism are simply expected. They are not individuals. They are pebbles in the avalanche that will crush the enemies of the Emperor. The final stage of training requires recruits to survive on the surface of Krieg itself, performing maneuvers and fighting mock battles in the nuclear-blasted battlefields that cover their world. Many do not survive this final phase. Those who do are considered worthy of the Death Corps. They are given their number, their mask, their greatcoat, and their weapons. And then they are shipped off to die on some distant world they have never heard of, for a cause they understand only in the most abstract terms. They go willingly, eagerly even, because dying for the Emperor is the only thing that gives their existence meaning. It is the only way they know to atone for the sin of their ancestors. The Death Corps of Krieg is famous throughout the Imperium for its willingness to accept casualties that would break any other regiment. At the Siege of Rax, a 17-year campaign to retake an armory world from chaos-corrupted forces, the Death Corps suffered approximately 14 million casualties, 14 million soldiers dead over 17 years, and they considered it a success because the world was retaken. That is not bravery. That is not even fanaticism. That is the product of a culture that has made death into a sacrament. Krieg produces no psychers. Whether this is due to the radioactive conditions on the planet or to systematic culling of anyone who shows psychic ability is unknown. And nobody on Krieg is talking. The commissars attached to Death Corps regiments, the only non-Krieg personnel allowed within their ranks, serve a very different role from commissars in other regiments. They are not there to boost morale or prevent cowardice. Death Corps soldiers do not know cowardice. The commissars are there to restrain them, to remind them of the larger strategic picture, to stop them from throwing their lives away in pointless charges when those lives could be more efficiently spent elsewhere. There are no dreams on Krieg, no ambitions beyond the next charge, no future beyond the next battle. Just duty, guilt, and the endless churning of the Vitae Worms producing the next batch of soldiers who will never know sunlight, never taste real food, never form a meaningful relationship, and never live long enough to question why any of this is happening. Number 3. Nostramo. If Krieg is what happens when guilt consumes a civilization, Nostramo is what happens when a civilization has no light at all. Not figuratively, not metaphorically, literally. Nostramo was a world of perpetual, unending darkness, and that darkness seeped into every single aspect of life on the planet until it produced one of the most psychologically broken primarchs in Imperial history, and a legion of terror troops that would eventually turn traitor and hunt the Imperium's own citizens. For sport, Nostramo orbited a dim and distant sun so weak that its light barely reached the planet's surface. The world existed in eternal night, not twilight, not dim light, true, absolute darkness that never lifted and never changed. The people of Nostramo adapted to this over millennia. Their eyes grew large and pale, capable of seeing in conditions that would leave a standard human completely blind. Their skin became pallid from never experiencing sunlight. Their culture, their psychology, their entire worldview was shaped by the simple fact that they had never seen the sun and never would. The planet was rich in adamantium, one of the strongest and most valuable metals in the Imperium. The entire economy of Nostramo was built around mining this precious resource from deep beneath the planet's surface. But like so many resource-rich worlds throughout human history, The wealth generated by Nostramo's mines did not benefit the people who did the actual mining. Nostramo was ruled by a capitalist oligarchy. A tiny class of obscenely wealthy mine owners and industrial barons lived in whatever comfort the planet could provide, while the vast majority of the population was crushed under a weight of poverty so extreme that it defined every aspect of their existence. The justice system on Nostramo was a joke played on the poor. Laws existed only to protect the property and persons of the wealthy. Courts were bought and sold like commodities. Police forces, such as they were, served the interests of the oligarchs and ignored or participated in crimes against the lower classes. This was not a subtle corruption. It was open, brazen, and total. Everyone on Nostramo knew that the system was rigged. Everyone knew that the rich could do whatever they wanted without consequence. And everyone knew that if you were born poor, which almost everyone was, your life meant nothing to anyone with the power to change things. In this environment, crime was not just common. It was the operating system of daily life. Murder, theft, extortion, gang warfare, and worse were as routine as breathing. The darkness that covered the planet was not just physical but cultural and spiritual. There was no hope on Nostramo, no sense that tomorrow could be better than today, no belief that hard work or good behavior would be rewarded. People were born into misery, lived in fear, and died in violence, often at the hands of the very authorities who were supposed to protect them. And then they were forgotten, because on Nostramo, everybody was forgotten eventually. When the infant Primarch, who would become Konrad Curze, landed on this world, nobody found him and took him in. Nobody adopted the crying child and raised him with love and guidance. Unlike most of his brothers, who were discovered by someone, whether it was a tribe, a king, a scholar, or a blacksmith, Curze was completely alone. He grew up feral in the deepest, darkest parts of the Undercity, surviving on whatever he could hunt and observing the humans around him from the shadows. He watched, he learned, and what he learned was that the strong preyed on the weak without consequence. That justice was a fiction, that the only language that Nostramo's people understood was fear, and so fear became his weapon. He began killing criminals, not arresting them, not reforming them, killing them, brutally, publicly. He dismembered petty thieves and left their bodies in the streets. He flayed corrupt officials and hung their skins from buildings. He disemboweled gang leaders and arranged their organs in patterns meant to be seen by as many people as possible. Crime on Nostramo began to disappear, not because people had become better, because they were terrified. Mothers warned their children to behave or the Night Haunter would find them. The name stuck. Konrad Curze became the Night Haunter, and under his rule, Nostramo experienced something it had never known before. Order. A vicious, blood-soaked, fear-driven order, but order nonetheless. Eventually, Curze revealed himself to the people and took his place as the ruler of the largest city on Nostramo. He attempted to govern. He used his power to gather knowledge, learning everything he could about as many subjects as possible. He led fairly, at least by his own standards. He even allowed himself some hope that his planet could be saved. But then, the nightmares would come. Like several of his brothers, Curze was psychically gifted. His particular ability was foresight, but it was not the clear, useful foresight that some psychers possess. Curze's visions were nightmares. He saw a dark and terrifying future. He saw the Imperium burning. He saw his brothers turning on each other, and he saw his own death in graphic, unavoidable detail. These visions had plagued him since childhood, and every time he seemed to be getting a handle on his mental state, another seizure would hit, another nightmare would come, and he would go hunting for criminals again. This is the fundamental problem with Nostramo. Even when it was ruled by a demigod who genuinely wanted to make things better, it was still a nightmare. The poverty did not change. The darkness did not lift. The mining continued. The wealthy oligarchs simply learned to hide their corruption better. And when Curze left with his legion to join the Great Crusade, the planet immediately reverted to its old ways. The crime came roaring back. The corruption returned with a vengeance. The darkness swallowed everything again, somehow even worse than before. What made it worse was that the nobility of Nostramo deliberately sabotaged Curze's recruiting efforts. He had wanted the finest, most upstanding young men from his world to serve in his Night Lord's Legion. Instead, the wealthy families tricked him, sending criminals, prisoners, and the dregs of society to fill his ranks. By the time Kurz discovered what had happened, his legion was corrupted from within, and he believed neither his world nor his marines could be saved. His response was characteristic of everything Nostramo had taught him. He destroyed it. His flagship fired upon the planet, and Nostramo was shattered. The world that had birthed the Night Haunter ended the same way everything on Nostramo always ended, in darkness and violence and the screams of people who never had a chance. Number 4. Catachan. If Nostramo was a world where human beings were the monsters, Catachan is a world where literally everything else is the monster and the humans are just the appetizers. This is the most infamous death world in the entire Imperium. A planet so dangerous that even space marines, the genetically enhanced super soldiers who fight tyrannids and demons for a living, are said to avoid it. Not because they are afraid, because it would be strategically pointless. On Catachan, the planet itself is the enemy, and it has had millions of years of evolution to perfect its killing techniques. Catachan is located in the Ultima Segmentum and is covered entirely in the densest, most hostile jungle ecosystem anyone has ever encountered. When Imperial exploratory probes first arrived in the system, the planet looked perfect from orbit. A calm, green, pleasant world. An ideal candidate for colonization. This was the trap, because when the first colony ships crash-landed on the surface during the Dark Age of technology, and the colonists had no way to escape, they discovered that they had walked into the most efficient killing ground in the galaxy. Every single animal on Catachan is a carnivore. Every single plant is poisonous. This is not an exaggeration. This is the official Imperial classification. The entire ecosystem appears to be consciously hostile to all foreign life, as if the jungle itself is a single living organism that has decided humanity is an invasive species to be eradicated. Let us talk about some of the things that want to kill you on Catachan. The Catachan Devil is a centipede-like predator the size of a train car. It has armored carapace that can deflect rifle bullets, poisonous tail barbs, and jaws that can bite through a battle tank. It is extremely territorial and reproduces so quickly that its population can double within 24 hours. It can even damage Necron living metal with its mandibles. Catching and killing a Catachan Devil is considered a rite of passage among the planet's elite soldiers. The Catachan Devils, who are named after the creature. One famous Catachan trooper managed to kill one only by allowing the devil to eat his leg while he stabbed the weak point between its armor plates. He survived. Most do not. The Venus mantrap is a carnivorous plant that can grow 20 to 30 meters tall. Unlike a normal Venus flytrap, which sits passively waiting for prey, the mantrap actively hunts. Its leaves are connected to a central immobile body by long stalks, and these leaves can move considerable distances to reach, grab, and crush prey. Sensitive trigger hairs detect nearby movement, and the trapping mechanism activates instantly. A human being caught by a mantrap leaf is clamped, crushed, and slowly digested. The plant cannot be reasoned with. It cannot be scared. It just eats. The brain leaf is perhaps the most insidious organism on the planet. It appears to be a small, unremarkable tree, but its leaves can detach and float through the air using a wing-like motion. When a leaf lands on a victim's head, nerve bundles burrow through the skin and into the spinal column and brain, taking complete control of the body. The victim becomes a puppet of the brain leaf, walking around and acting normally, but completely under the plant's control. They are used to lure other victims close enough for additional leaves to attach. The victim's mind is still in there. They can feel everything. They just cannot control their own body. The spiker fires mutagenic spikes at passing animals and humans. If a spike penetrates the skin, it releases chemicals that begin transforming the victim's body into another spiker plant. A person hit in the arm will find the arm becoming hairy, stiff, and covered in spines. Within a short time, the transformation spreads to the entire body. The mind is destroyed. The victim wanders aimlessly, unable to comprehend what is happening to them, until they lose all mobility and become rooted to the ground. What was once a human being is now a plant, and it will fire spikes at the next person who walks by. The great barking toad is the most toxic creature known to humanity in the entire galaxy. It looks harmless. It looks like a large, benign amphibian. But if startled, if it perceives any threat at all, it neurologically explodes in a cloud of toxin, so powerful that it kills everything within a 1-kilometer radius. Power armor does not help. Sealed environmental suits do not help. Respirators and gas masks do not help. There is no known antidote. The barking toad kills itself in the explosion as well, but given that it had no qualms about detonating in the first place, that seems like cold comfort. Even the things that are too small to see are lethal. Airborne microbes float through the jungle, entering the bloodstream through any exposed skin and killing without warning. Swamps produce fog that will chemically burn the lungs out of anyone who inhales it. The water is contaminated with diseases and poisons. Insects carry multiple lethal diseases in a single bite. Foot rot sets in after a few weeks in the jungle, causing the flesh of the feet to decompose until they literally detach from the legs, producing a smell that draws more predators. Buildings on Catachan are temporary by definition. Vines take hold on any structure and crush it. Toxic lichen melts mortar. The jungle seems to concentrate its efforts on wherever humans attempt to settle, pushing back with redoubled ferocity. No human settlement on Catachan has ever been permanent. The inhabitants are constantly moving, constantly rebuilding, constantly fighting the jungle just to maintain the barest foothold on a planet that does not want them there. 50% of the human population of Catachan does not survive infancy. Of the survivors, 50% do not live past the age of 10. Children learn to shoot before they learn to walk. By the time a human child on another world is learning to read, a Catachan child must already be a deadly fighter capable of surviving alone in the jungle, or they will die. There is no other option. The planet does not accommodate weakness. The Adeptus Mechanicus has theorized that Catachan's ecosystem may have been shaped by an ancient tyrannid incursion that arrived on the planet and failed. The organisms left behind by the defeated hive fleet continued to evolve independently, creating an ecosystem specifically designed to destroy anything that does not belong. If this theory is correct, then the entire planet is essentially one enormous biological weapon that was never deactivated. Every tree, every vine, every insect, every fungus, every microbe is a component of a planetary defense system built to exterminate invaders. And as far as Catachan is concerned, humans are invaders. The people who survive all of this are the Catachan jungle fighters, and they are among the most dangerous human beings in the galaxy. They are physically and mentally tougher than almost any other unaugmented humans in the Imperium, earning them the nickname Baby Ogrins from other guardsmen, a name that is never used to their faces because doing so tends to result in serious injury. Most Catachan soldiers claim that even the most suicidal military assignment is easier than a normal day on their homeworld. This is not bravado. This is honest assessment from people who have literally been fighting for their lives since before they could walk. Number 5. Medrengard. We have talked about alien cruelty and human self-destruction and biological nightmares. Now let us talk about what happens when a bitter, genius demigod is given an entire planet inside the Eye of Terror and told to do whatever he wants with it. The answer is Medrengard, the demon world of Perturabo, the daemon primarch of the Iron Warriors. And it is every bit as pleasant as you would expect from a world ruled by the most resentful being in the galaxy. Medrengard exists inside the Eye of Terror, the massive warp rift that was torn open by the birth of Slaanesh. Inside this wound in reality, the laws of physics bend and break. Time flows differently. Space folds in on itself. Daemon worlds drift through the madness like islands in an ocean of nightmares, each one shaped by the will of whatever dark power claims dominion over it. Medrengard is shaped by Perturabo, and what Perturabo wanted was a fortress, not a fortress on a planet. The planet as a fortress. The entire world has been transformed into a single, planet-spanning fortification of iron and stone. In the visions of Imperial psychers who have been unfortunate enough to glimpse Medrengard, the world appears as mountains of inconceivably high towers reaching up into a white sky where a black sun pours smoky threads of darkness onto the corrupted surface below. Dungeons penetrate deep into the planet's molten core. Fortress walls stretch across entire continents. Defensive emplacements bristle from every surface. And somewhere in the heart of it all in the grandest fortress of all, a fortress known simply as the Fortress of Hate, sits Perturabo himself, designing, building, tearing down, and rebuilding, endlessly creating the perfect fortification that no one will ever attack, solving engineering problems that no one will ever appreciate, because that is all Perturabo has ever wanted, recognition for his genius. And it is the one thing the galaxy has always denied him. The warsmiths of the Iron Warriors, the commanders of the Legion's various grand companies, each maintain their own imposing fortress on Medrengard. These fortresses are not just defensive positions, they are statements of power, symbols of their owner's status within the Legion, and they are constantly being tested. Power struggles between warsmiths are common and violent. Alliances form and dissolve. Fortresses are besieged, breached, and rebuilt. There are even rumors that Perturabo himself orchestrates some of these internal conflicts, deliberately setting his warsmiths against each other to weed out the weak and keep the strong sharp. It is the Iron Warrior's way. Strength through conflict. Survival through superiority. But it is not the Iron Warriors who make Medrengard truly awful. It is the slaves. Medrengard is described in reconnaissance reports as a bleak jail world where slaves are worked to death. The Iron Warriors do not waste resources on comfort or mercy. Human slaves are brought from raids across the galaxy and put to work building, maintaining, and expanding the endless fortifications that cover the planet's surface. They quarry stone, they forge metal, they haul materials up towers that scrape the impossible sky. And when they are too broken to work anymore, they are disposed of. Or worse, they are incorporated into the fortifications themselves. The Iron Warriors have a particular fondness for using human bodies as construction material. Living slaves are built into fortress walls. Their bones serve as supports. Their flesh is mortared into stone. Some are kept alive, trapped within the walls, screaming endlessly as the weight of the structure presses down on them. Their agony is not incidental. It serves a purpose. In the Eye of Terror, suffering has power. The screams of the enslaved strengthen the demonic energies that permeate the planet, making the fortresses more resilient against the reality-warping forces of the warp. Great chaos warships are tethered to the tallest towers of Medrengard, vast vessels of war that can be launched at a moment's notice when the Iron Warriors decide to raid real space. The Iron Warriors themselves live in these towers and in the fortress complexes below, maintaining their war machines, forging new weapons, and plotting their next campaign of conquest. They are not demons. They are not mindless servants of chaos. They are cold, calculating, brilliant warriors who happen to live on a planet inside a tear in reality. They still think of themselves as soldiers. They still follow military discipline. They still value logic and efficiency. They just happen to serve a Primarch who has become a Daemon Prince and who builds his fortresses with screaming human beings in the walls. The unfleshed roam the hills and gullies of Medrengard outside the fortress complexes. These wretched creatures were once human, perhaps even once space marines, but the corrupting influence of the warp and the experiments of the Iron Warriors' dark mechanicum allies have twisted them into cannibalistic mutants, barely recognizable as having once been sentient. They are not a threat to the Iron Warriors themselves, but any escaped slave who makes it past the fortress walls will likely be hunted down and devoured by these pathetic creatures. There is no natural life on Medrengard. No plants, no animals, no ecosystem, no water that has not been processed through industrial filtration. Just iron, stone, and the endless sound of hammering, grinding, and screaming that echoes across the planet's surface at all hours, because on Medrengard there is no night and no day. Just the black sun in the white sky, and the eternal work of building a fortress that will never be finished, because perfection does not exist, not even for a demigod with eternity to work on it. Number 6. Baal. The homeworld of the Blood Angels is a name that carries weight and respect across the entire Imperium. The Sons of Sanguinius are among the most noble, most celebrated, and most beloved of all Space Marine chapters. They are warriors of incredible skill and beauty, their fortress monastery filled with works of art that rival the greatest masterpieces of any civilization. Their Primarch was an angel in every sense of the word, a being of such perfection that even his brothers acknowledged he was the best of them. Horus himself said that Sanguinius should have been made War Master instead of him. But the planet that produced this angel is no paradise. Baal and its two moons, Baal Primus and Baal Secundus, are irradiated wastelands that have been dying since before the Imperium existed. Millennia before the Emperor launched his Great Crusade, Baal and its moons were devastated by a cataclysmic war. Ancient nuclear and chemical weapons, the kind of terrifyingly effective instruments of destruction that humanity had produced during the Dark Age of technology, were deployed across all three worlds. The weapons did their job with horrible efficiency. The once livable surfaces were transformed into toxic hellscapes. The atmosphere became thick with radiation, the soil was poisoned, the water was contaminated. Everything that could sustain life was systematically destroyed. The survivors became scavengers. They organized into tribes that warred constantly over the scraps that remained. Food was whatever could be found. Water was whatever could be filtered through makeshift purification systems that rarely worked properly. Irradiation mutated many of the survivors over generations, turning them into monstrous forms that barely resembled their ancestors. These mutant hordes roamed the wastelands in massive numbers, attacking the unmutated human tribes and making an already desperate existence even more precarious. By the time the infant Sanguinius landed on Baal Secundus, the situation was as bad as it could possibly be. The unmutated human tribes lived in small, fragile communities under constant siege from mutant hordes. Every day was a fight for survival. Every meal was a victory. Every child who reached adulthood was a small miracle. When the colonists found the Primarch, a glowing, beautiful infant with pure white wings growing from his back, they believed a savior had come. And in many ways, one had. Sanguinius grew with the speed that all Primarchs did. By his first year, he was taller and stronger than any man in the tribe. His wings grew with him, becoming powerful enough to carry him into the air. He was psychically gifted with the ability to see glimpses of the future, and he used every one of his gifts to protect his people. He led the Blood, the tribe that had found him, to victory after victory against the mutant hordes, securing territory, resources, and a measure of safety that the tribe had never known before. But even after Sanguinius was reunited with the Emperor and given command of the 9th Legion, Baal did not improve. The radiation damage was too deep and too permanent. The moons and the planet remained toxic deserts, where survival required extreme toughness and constant vigilance. The Blood Angels continued to recruit from the surviving human tribes, selecting only the strongest and most resilient aspirants for the grueling process of becoming a Space Marine. The initiation itself is one of the most brutal in the Imperium. Aspirants are required to survive for extended periods in the irradiated wastes, fighting mutants, enduring radiation storms, and proving themselves worthy of the angel's blood that will transform them. The tribal culture of Baal is harsh out of necessity. Resources are fought over with lethal intensity. Blood feuds between rival tribes can span generations, maintained with obsessive devotion. Cannibalism exists among the mutant hordes, and even the unmutated tribes live at the very edge of what humans can endure. Radiation storms sweep across the surface regularly, capable of killing an unprotected human within minutes. The contaminated water supply ensures that disease is a constant companion. Children born on Baal are statistically more likely to die before their first year than to survive it. What makes Baal particularly tragic is the stark contrast between what it represents and what it actually is. Inside the Blood Angels' fortress monastery, there is beauty, there is art, there is culture and craft, and a dedication to excellence that rivals any institution in the Imperium. But step outside those walls, and you are standing on a poisoned, irradiated rock, populated by desperate, warring tribes, fighting over the last scraps of a world that died thousands of years ago. Baal is a monument to the gap between the Imperium's aspirations and its reality. The most angelic chapter was born on one of the ugliest, most hopeless worlds in existence. And they keep recruiting from it, keep drawing their strength from a place of unimaginable suffering, because that suffering is what makes them strong enough to fight the wars that the Imperium needs them to fight. Number 7. Necromunda Underhive. Not every terrible place in Warhammer 40k is on a distant death world or a demon planet spinning inside a tear in reality. Some of the worst places to live are right in the heart of the Imperium, in the massive hive cities that house the majority of humanity. And of all the hive cities across the Imperium's million worlds, none has a worse reputation than Necromunda. Necromunda is a hive world in the segmentum solar, relatively close to Terra itself. Its hive cities are enormous arcologies, vertical cities that stretch kilometers into the polluted sky, housing billions of people in layers stacked one on top of the other, like the levels of a massive rotting cake. At the top is the spire, where the noble houses and the wealthy elite live in relative luxury, governing the planet and skimming the profits from its industrial output. In the middle levels are the manufactoria, the vast factory floors where the working population labors endlessly to produce goods for the Imperium. And at the bottom, far below where the light from the upper levels can reach, is the underhive. The underhive is built on the ruins of older sections of the hive that have collapsed, been built over, or been forgotten entirely over thousands of years of continuous construction. The hive cities of Necromunda have been growing for millennia, layer upon layer, and the lowest levels are so old that no one remembers who built them or what they were originally for. The structures have decayed, collapsed, and been scavenged so many times that the underhive is a labyrinth of broken corridors, sealed chambers, collapsed tunnels, and jury-rigged passages that connect to nothing. Down here, the air is thick with industrial pollution, chemical runoff from the factories above, and the stench of decay. Lighting is scarce and unreliable, coming from stolen power cells, bioluminescent fungi, and the occasional fire. There is no law enforcement. There is no government authority. There is no healthcare, no education, no sanitation, no clean water, no reliable food supply. The only authority in the underhive is the authority that comes from being willing and able to hurt people more effectively than the people around you. The gangs of Necromunda control the underhive. Each gang is affiliated with one of the noble houses that rule the planet from the spire above, though the relationship is more feudal than corporate. The houses provide some resources and patronage. The gangs fight for territory, control trade routes, and extract what little wealth exists in the lower levels. House Goliath produces massive, chemically enhanced brutes who live for physical combat and consider anything less than punching someone through a wall to be a sign of weakness. House Escher is composed entirely of women who specialize in the use of exotic toxins, combat chemicals, and weapons that kill in creative and unpleasant ways. House Van Saar possesses the most advanced technology of any gang, though this technology comes at a price. Their members suffer from a genetic curse that causes rapid aging and cellular degradation, meaning every Van Saar fighter is slowly dying from the moment they pick up a weapon. House Cawdor are religious fanatics who worship the Emperor with murderous intensity, viewing everyone who does not share their specific brand of zealotry as a heretic worthy of burning. House Delac are spies, information brokers, and assassins who deal in secrets and manipulation, operating from the shadows with an efficiency that makes the Alpha Legion look sloppy. House Orlok are miners and laborers, blue-collar workers who fight for control of the ore trade routes that are the economic lifeblood of the underhive. The gang wars never stop. Territory changes hands constantly. Today's secure stronghold is tomorrow's burning ruin. The people caught between the gangs, the non-combatants, the families, the workers who just want to survive, have no protection and no recourse. If a gang decides they want your hab block, they take it. If they decide they want your food, they take it. If they decide they want you, for labor, for entertainment, or for something worse, they take you, and nobody comes to help. Nobody even knows you are gone. Below the underhive are the deeper ruins, the sump and the true depths of the hive, areas so ancient and so dangerous that even the gangs rarely venture there. These abyss levels are home to mutants who have lived in total darkness for so many generations that they have evolved into something barely recognizable as human. Massive predatory creatures lurk in the deepest pools of toxic waste. Rogue servitors, automated systems that have been running without maintenance for centuries, patrol the forgotten corridors, attacking anything that moves. And in the darkest, most hidden corners, cults dedicated to the Chaos Gods or to the insidious Gen-stealer organisms fester in secret, growing in strength until they are powerful enough to threaten the hive from within. A person born in the Necromunda underhive will likely never see the sky. They will never breathe air that has not been recycled 1,000 times through the hive's failing filtration systems. They will never eat food that has not been processed from corpse starch, recycled biomatter, or whatever nutrient paste the manufacturer deigned to dump into the lower levels. Their entire world is a few square kilometers of rusting metal, dripping pipes, and flickering lights, surrounded on all sides by people who would kill them for the boots on their feet. Number 8. Savlar. There are worlds in the Imperium that exist for no purpose other than to punish. Savlar is one of the purest examples. A world whose entire function is to take the people that Imperial society does not want and grind them into raw materials. It is not a death world. It is not a demon planet. It is something arguably worse. It is a world that humanity deliberately made into a hellhole and then filled with the people it wanted to forget about. Savlar was originally a mining world, notable only for the rich chemical deposits found on the volcanic moons of Savlar penitents. It was inhospitable but functional. Mining operations extracted the chemicals. Those chemicals supplied 3 civilized worlds and 2 forge worlds in the surrounding subsectors. It was not pleasant work, but it was work, and it kept the Imperium's industrial machine running. Then, Savlar failed to meet its imperial tithes sometime in the 39th millennium. The Imperium does not respond kindly to shortfalls. The planet was immediately converted into a penal colony. Criminals from across the Armageddon sector were shipped to Savlar by the thousands, then by the tens of thousands. Murderers, thieves, traitors, heretics, political dissidents, people who had failed to pay their tithes, people who had looked at the wrong official the wrong way. The Adeptus Arbites were given control of the planet, and they ran it the only way they knew how, with absolute, uncompromising brutality. The conditions on Savlar are nightmarish. The atmosphere is so toxic that everyone on the planet must wear crude rebreather units connected to canisters on their backs just to survive. The chemical deposits that make the planet valuable are the same chemicals that make it lethal. The mines are poisonous environments, where the death rate became so infamous among the criminal underworld of the sector that Savlar earned the nickname the Dead Dog Moons. The phrase dead, as Savlar became common slang. Outside the great manufacturer cities, where the Arbites maintain some semblance of order, criminality is absolutely rampant. Savlar's society is defined by gang warfare, violence, and a kind of brutal survivalism that makes the Necromunda underhive look organized. The population is a seething mass of desperate, dangerous, drugged-up convicts and their equally dangerous offspring. 1 out of every 4 people born on Savlar is estimated to not know the identity of their father, a statistic that speaks volumes about the nature of daily life on the planet. The Savlar Chemdogs, the penal legion regiments raised from this festering pit, are everything you would expect from an army of criminals. They steal from other Imperial Guard regiments as readily as from the enemy. They huff combat stimulants called nitrochems through modified rebreathers to work themselves into a hyper-aggressive state before battle, because without the drugs, most of them would probably run. Their officers are never drawn from Savlar itself, but from the Schola Progenium, because no Savlar native can be trusted with authority over other soldiers. They carry whatever weapons they can steal, modify, or build from scavenged parts. Their commissars, and they have a lot of them, are not there to inspire bravery. They are there to shoot anyone who tries to desert or who gets too creative with their looting. But here is the truly awful thing about Savlar. The planet works. The Imperium gets its chemical tithes the mines produce. The Chemdogs fight, and some of them even fight well, because the promise of keeping whatever they loot from the battlefield and the threat of being sent back to Savlar if they disobey turns out to be surprisingly effective motivation. The system is cruel, wasteful, and deliberately dehumanizing, and the Imperium considers it a success story. Number 9. Tallarn. Some worlds in Warhammer 40,000 are born terrible. Some are made terrible by their inhabitants, and some have terrible inflicted upon them from outside. A single act of destruction, so catastrophic that the planet is forever changed. Tallarn is the last category. It was once one of the most beautiful worlds in the Imperium. Then Perturbo took that beauty away in an hour. and 10,000 years later, it has never come back. Before the Horus heresy, Tallarn was a verdant agri-world in the Segmentum Tempestus. It was a planet of rolling hills, broad oceans, lush jungles, and expansive savannas bathed in the gentle orange light of its twin suns. Its people prospered. The planet provided food for surrounding systems and served as a staging depot for the Great Crusade's fleets, with massive underground storage facilities holding vast reserves of armored vehicles and munitions. Then, during the heresy, the Iron Warriors came. Perturbo's fleet appeared in orbit and, at a single command, unleashed thousands of virus bombs upon the surface. The Life Eater virus is one of the most horrific weapons in the Imperial arsenal. It is designed to consume all organic matter it touches, breaking it down at the molecular level into a slurry of rotting biological waste. Within seconds of the first airborne detonations, all organic life on Tallarn's surface began to die. The virus was designed by an Iron Warriors specialist named Lysatra to be uniquely devastating. Unlike the virus bombs used at Istvan III, which produced a flammable miasma that could be ignited, Tallarn's atmosphere was deliberately poisoned to remain toxic for thousands of years. 10 million people died in 10 minutes. The entire surface population was dead within the hour. The jungles dissolved into seething rot. The oceans transformed into vast pools of decomposing sludge. The savannas became seas of caustic fog. Everything that had been alive on the surface of Tallarn was consumed, and what was left was a dead landscape, doused in banks of poisonous mist that would linger for millennia. But the virus bombs did not kill everyone. Nearly 1 billion people had made it to underground enviro shelters before the bombardment. These survivors were safe from the virus but trapped beneath a world that no longer existed. When the Iron Warriors landed to take control of the planet, the Tallarn survivors emerged from their shelters in sealed armored vehicles. They could not breathe the air. They could not set foot on the ground without dying. But they could fight from inside their tanks. And fight they did. What followed was the Battle of Tallarn, the single largest tank engagement in the history of the Imperium. Over 10 million armored vehicles eventually took part in the battle as both sides committed more and more resources. Loyalist reinforcements arrived from across the sector. Iron Warriors poured more troops and equipment onto the surface. The fighting lasted for months. Every engagement was vehicle versus vehicle, metal versus metal, in a landscape of sulfurous dunes and poisonous fog. Infantry could not operate outside of sealed vehicles because the atmosphere was still saturated with lethal virus remnants that would kill a human being within seconds. By the end, the Iron Warriors were forced to withdraw. Perturbo had actually been searching for an ancient chaos artifact called the Cursus of Alganar, a portal between the warp and real space, hidden beneath the planet's surface. When Horus ordered him to disengage, he had no choice but to comply. The wreckage of over 1 million tanks littered the sands. Tallarn remained in Imperial hands, but there was nothing left worth holding. In the centuries following the heresy, the poisons and pathogens in the atmosphere gradually diminished, but the planet was forever changed. Where there had been rolling green hills, there were now dunes of sulfurous sand. Where there had been broad blue oceans, there were now empty basins of wind-scoured rock. Where there had been jungles teeming with life, there was nothing but silence and the whisper of sand against dead stone. The people of Tallarn adapted, because humans always adapt. They organized into tribes and built their settlements underground, connected by a vast network of subterranean tunnels. They developed a culture centered on honor, vendetta, and survival in the desert. Their intertribal conflicts are a constant reality, with blood feuds that can span generations maintained with almost religious intensity. The Tallarn Desert Raiders became some of the finest armored warfare specialists in the Astra Militarum, their skill born directly from the desperate tank battles of the heresy. But no matter how well the Tallarn have adapted, their world is still a poisoned husk. The green paradise is gone forever. The beauty of Tallarn exists now only in stories told underground by people who have never seen a tree, never swum in an ocean, never felt rain on their faces. Everything that made their world worth living on was burned away in a single hour of spite by a Primarch who did not even particularly care about Tallarn. He just wanted what was buried under it. The planet and its billions of dead were collateral damage. Number 10. The ash wastes of Armageddon. We end our list not with a single planet or city, but with the spaces between. The dead zones. The wastelands that stretch between the towering hive cities of one of the most strategically important worlds in the Imperium. The ash wastes of Armageddon are a permanent chemical fallout wasteland, a toxic desert that covers the bulk of the planet's surface, and they are some of the most inhospitable terrain that a human being can attempt to survive in outside of an actual daemon world. Armageddon is an Imperial hive world and industrial world located 10,000 light-years to the galactic northeast of Terra, in the Segmentum Solar. It is the industrial hub of the entire Armageddon sector, and many worlds within a several light-year radius depend on its massive manufacturing output. The planet's factories produce weapons, vehicles, ammunition, and equipment for the Astra Militarum on a scale that boggles the mind. It has been said that the sacrifice of over 1 million Imperial soldiers is worth one day's hive world production in weapons and armor. Armageddon is that kind of world. Strategically vital, industrially irreplaceable, and utterly devastated by the twin forces of pollution and war. Thousands of years of intense, unrelenting industrial activity have reduced the surface of Armageddon to barren wastelands and polluted oceans. The bulk of the subcontinents of Armageddon Prime and Armageddon Secundus are covered in ash wastes, the accumulated toxic byproducts of millennia of heavy manufacturing. Every factory, every forge complex, every refinery and processing plant has been dumping its chemical waste onto the surface for as long as anyone can remember. The result is a landscape of grey-brown desolation, a desert made not of natural sand, but of industrial ash, contaminated soil, and the chemical residue of processes that produce everything from Lasgun power packs to Lehman Russ battle tanks. The air in the ash wastes is so toxic that a person breathing it freely would feel their lungs begin to melt and rot away. This is not a figure of speech. The atmosphere outside of Armageddon's sealed hive cities contains corrosive chemical agents that will physically destroy human lung tissue on contact. An unprotected human would die within minutes, choking on their own dissolving respiratory system. Even the planet's famous Steel Legion regiments, the mechanized infantry forces raised from Armageddon's population, are heavily equipped with sealed armor, rebreather systems, and fully enclosed vehicles specifically designed to protect against this environment. Every vehicle in their arsenal possesses airtight seals to ward passengers from the acidic atmosphere. Even their battle banners are coated with highly resistant materials to prevent the corrosive air from eating through them. Moving between hive cities requires sealed armored convoys that traverse the wastes like submarines moving through a hostile ocean. These convoys follow established routes and are constantly at risk of attack from the things that somehow manage to survive in the ash wastes. Hardy mutants, twisted by generations of exposure to industrial toxins, have adapted to survive in conditions that would kill a normal human within minutes. These ash waste nomads raid the convoys, scavenging whatever they can carry and retreating into the toxic desert where pursuit is virtually impossible. But the ash wastes are not just dangerous because of pollution. They are also a battlefield. Armageddon has been the site of 3 massive wars, each one leaving behind a fresh layer of destruction on top of the existing environmental catastrophe. The first war for Armageddon was fought against Chaos. The Daemon Primarch Angron ascended to daemonhood as a Prince of Khorne, led his World-Eaters Chaos Space Marines and hordes of daemons in an invasion that nearly consumed the planet. Imperial forces, including the Space Wolves and Grey Knights, eventually drove the Chaos forces back, but the aftermath was almost as terrible as the war itself. To preserve the secret of the daemons and the Grey Knights, the Inquisition rounded up the entire surviving population of Armageddon. They sterilized them. They sentenced them to work camps for the rest of their lives. And they brought in a new population to resettle the planet, people who would have no knowledge of what had happened. When some soldiers managed to escape the containment action, the Inquisition destroyed 3 entire worlds in the Tremaine sector to silence a single company of troops who had witnessed the Grey Knights in action. The secrets of the Imperium are paid for in blood, and the people of Armageddon paid more than most. The second war for Armageddon came decades later, when the Orc war boss Gazkul Mag Uruk Thraka led a massive warg against the planet. The incompetent overlord Hermann von Straub bungled the defense so badly that entire hive cities fell to the orc hordes before the legendary Commissar Yarrick organized a desperate defense at Hades' Hive. The Second War ended in an imperial victory, but only after Space Marine chapters, including the Ultramarines, Salamanders and Blood Angels, intervened. Then came the Third War. Ghazghkull returned with an even larger force, and this time the fighting engulfed the entire planet. Hive cities were destroyed by asteroids hurled from orbiting orc space hulks. Millions of armored vehicles clashed across the ash wastes. Titan war machines and orc gargants stomped through the toxic desert, their battles leaving behind fields of wreckage, unexploded ordnance, and the corpses of millions. The Third War ground on for years with no definitive conclusion, leaving the ash wastes littered with the accumulated debris of 3 separate major conflicts, layered on top of thousands of years of industrial pollution. The people who live in the ash wastes outside the sealed hive cities are the absolute bottom of Armageddon's social hierarchy. They are mutants, outcasts, deserters, and criminals. People who have been expelled from the hive cities or who were born in the wastes to parents who were themselves exiles. They have no access to the sealed, filtered environments of the hives. They breathe the poisoned air through whatever crude filtration devices they can build or steal. They drink water contaminated by industrial chemicals, nuclear residue from the wars, and the biological waste of a planet that has been dying for millennia. They eat whatever they can scavenge from the wreckage of battle or steal from passing convoys. Their lifespans are short, their existences are brutal, and the Imperium does not even acknowledge their existence. They are not counted in the planetary census. They do not appear in any official records. They are ghost people living in a ghost landscape, surrounded by the rusting hulks of 1 million dead tanks and the bones of 1 million dead soldiers. Living in the ash wastes of Armageddon means existing in a permanent state of chemical exposure, radiation contamination, and physical danger. You are too poor for the hive cities, too mutated for acceptance, too far from help for rescue. You are living in the Imperium's backyard, the place where all the waste and all the forgotten people end up. And you will die there, unknown and unmourned, in a toxic desert that stretches for thousands of kilometers in every direction. A monument to what happens when a civilization prioritizes production above everything else, including the world it is standing on and the people who call that world home. And there you have it. 10 places in the galaxy of Warhammer 40,000 where you would never ever, under any circumstances, want to set foot. From the nightmare dimension of Commorragh, where your pain is someone else's sustenance, to the poisoned ash wastes of Armageddon, where the air is actively dissolving your lungs, the 41st millennium offers a stunning variety of ways to suffer and die, on worlds that seem specifically designed to make existence as miserable as possible. What is remarkable about this list is how varied the sources of horror are. Commorragh is terrible because of alien cruelty. Krieg is terrible because of human guilt. Nostramo was terrible because of institutional corruption. Catachan is terrible because of daemonic madness. Baal is terrible because of ancient weapons. Necromunda is terrible because of social collapse. Savlar is terrible because of imperial indifference. Tallarn is terrible because of spite. And Armageddon's ash wastes are terrible because of industrial neglect. 10 different worlds, 10 different flavors of suffering, and every single one of them is entirely consistent with the universe that Games Workshop has been building for nearly 4 decades. Because that is the genius of Warhammer 40k. It is not just grimdark for the sake of being grimdark. Every terrible world, every awful place, every nightmare scenario is the logical consequence of the decisions made by the factions, leaders, and ordinary people who inhabit this universe. Commorragh exists because the Drukhari refused to change. Krieg exists because a colonel chose nuclear fire over surrender. Nostramo existed because the rich chose profit over justice. Catachan exists because nobody checked what was living in the jungle before they landed. Medrengard exists because a genius was never appreciated. Baal exists because ancient humans built weapons too terrible to survive. Necromunda exists because hive cities always rot from the bottom up. Savlar exists because the Imperium treats human beings like a disposable resource. Tallarn exists because Perturabo cared more about an artifact than about 8 billion lives. And the ash wastes exist because nobody ever thinks about where the waste goes until it is too late. So the next time you are having a bad day, the next time you are stuck in traffic, or dealing with a broken appliance, or arguing with your landlord about the heating, just remember, at least you are not breathing recycled corpse air in a bunker on Krieg while waiting for your number to be called, so you can march into a trench and die for a god who might not even be aware you exist. At least you are not trying to avoid startling a great barking toad on Catachan while simultaneously fighting off a brain leaf, a spiker, and something with too many legs and not enough table manners. At least you are not waiting in a homunculus's oubliette in Commorragh while the ancient flesh sculptor decides which of your fingers to remove first and whether to let you watch. It could always be worse. In the 41st millennium, it is always worse. Which of these nightmare destinations do you think is the absolute worst? And are there other worlds in the Warhammer 40,000 universe that you think deserve a spot on this list? We barely scratched the surface of the galaxy's worst real estate. There are forge worlds where people are surgically bonded to machines at birth, their flesh slowly replaced with metal until nothing organic remains. There are death worlds, where the gravity alone can crush an unaugmented human. There are prison worlds, where the inmates have not seen another living being in decades, locked in solitary cells beneath the surface of barren moons. There are worlds within the Eye of Terror so warped by chaos that the land itself is made from compressed human bodies. The ground you walk on literally composed of the dead. There are worlds being consumed by tyrannid hive fleets, their atmospheres stripped away, their oceans drunk dry, every scrap of biomass devoured down to the bare rock. The galaxy of Warhammer 40,000 is enormous and enormously terrible, and we have only just begun to scratch the surface of its horrors. There is always more to talk about. There is always another world, another war, another atrocity waiting in the darkness between the stars. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war, and apparently, the real estate listings reflect that rather strongly.